Hey, it's MonitorBase. We're here with our strategy for finding deals in your partner database. All right, today our topic, we're here with Louie, myself, Lily, and William, and we're discussing how you can pull those deals out of your partner database.
By the way, if you want more of these monthly strategy videos, we're going to be constantly doing them. Subscribe to our blog. We'll put a link below, or follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we'll make sure that you get those.
What value can you provide to your partners and use their database to really find those deals that benefit both of you?
So a lot of the reason we felt like this was an important topic is because when we look at this, it's important that you have a strategy that you can execute on, and really any loan officer can execute on. Because there are some where people are like, you're one social media post away from, changing your life. And that's just, not the case. There's a lot of work that can go into it. And so systems that are replicable by anybody are really important. And this is one of those strategies we feel like, can be used by any loan officer. And it should fit within what they're currently doing without being, disruptive to their day-to-day business. It should be very complementary is our goal with a strategy like today's.
Yeah, so I'd like to jump in. So why monitor a realtor's database, and why is that important? So usually realtors do a lot of marketing. They probably have a much larger prospect sort of database or sphere of influence, because generally they do quite a bit of outreach and marketing. And there's so many people that know their name, whether they've done a transaction or not. So there's a value for you in having that connection with the realtor, because when that person's likely to be in the market for a mortgage, or they are, you can reach out and, mention the realtor's name, say, hey, I work with so-and-so on a lot of deals, and then kind of start the conversation that way. So you're not doing a cold call, you're bringing up somebody that they know. Another important reason is that in the past, we found that, before listing their home, 50% of borrowers would apply for a mortgage with a lender or online or at a bank in order to see what they qualify for before they ever list their home. You got people that they know their credit's perfect, they got all the money in the world, they're not worried about that so much, so they might talk to their realtor first. But in the past, 50% would apply before, and now that's probably even a bigger number given the rates. People need to know what they can qualify for. So the reason that that's important to you is this is access to data that you have as a lender that realtors don't have access to. And you'll be able to, see those leading indicators of that, and before the consumer ever reaches out to the agent or even thinks about reaching out to the agent. So it's a value that you can provide, and the agents really need to work together with you in order to get it.
And I think you kind of highlighted it, but I wanted to, I guess, clarify. When I've talked to people in the past, they look at it and they think, no, everybody starts with a realtor. And it's kind of a misattribution. Loan officers, I think, they put too much credit into the idea that all, purchase transactions start with a realtor. This was in the past 4 or so years that it was a 50-50 split, that start by applying or start by listing. And you mentioned it. And the reason, why someone would do one or the other is either, if I can get this value out of my home, then I'll sell it, is their primary concern. Or the flip side is, what can I qualify for as their primary concern? And with rates where they're at, there are just way more people concerned about what they will qualify for than they are concerned about what they will get as far as value out of their home. There's a relatively good amount of certainty that they're going to get what they want out of their home from a value perspective, and that it'll sell quickly. So that's just not a question for them. And that's what I think is pushing people further into this area where loan officers may not realize it, but they're that first point of contact in a lot of these situations. That's their primary concern. I mean, people look up homes online and they can do some basic math on their equity, but then they're, what interest rate is available and how's that going to affect me in qualifying, I think is a bigger question than it's ever been. So it's one of the reasons we think you could be an incredibly valuable resource to these realtors by using a service like this. You're catching opportunity way sooner and in ways that they can't actually access. They simply can't access this kind of data and information on their database. Only lenders can. So just to kind of reiterate that's what we've seen in the past and why we think it's trending in this direction.
Yeah, and so let's kind of go into some of the details. How do you get, what does it mean to monitor their database? How do you get their database? And there's so many different type of lender, realtor, affinity partnerships and partnerships. So we're not going to go deep into that. You can reach out to us and we can tell you there's a lot of different ways. It really depends on your, the relationships and how they're established with your realtors. But, agents are out there generating contacts just like you. And generally it's just, but over phone or email. And so the only thing that you really need in order to monitor that from the realtors is name and email or name and cell phone. And then you can import that in our system. We'll, append a street address and be able to monitor that customer's credit. It doesn't have to be a past client of you or the realtor. You don't need date of birth or social. It's just email address. Street address is great, but like I said, a lot of times we can put that together for you.
Jumping in on that same concept, you have to consider how realtors are different from lenders. Lenders tend to have a product that is, lenders have a product that nobody wants. Nobody wants a mortgage. Everyone wants a home. And so the realtor does get to sell the fun, the exciting, and the lender gets to work out all of the paperwork and the details. And so it's an interesting dynamic from a marketing perspective. And what it ultimately, that leads to in the industry is realtors do an open house and they get 50 people to show up and walk through the house and they collect contact information on these people. And then they have that list of leads. And, a lender posts on social media about how low their rates are or something like that. And only their mom likes the post. It's kind of challenging because you're selling a harder product. And so at the end of the day, when it comes to databases of potential home buyers and potential home sellers and prospects, realtors have an easier time than lenders in gathering that kind of data. And as a result of that, they have that kind of data. They have large databases of it. They've got those lists and they are able to take that information and do their kind of marketing to it. But what we're talking about here is the ability to take that list and say, these are the people that absolutely need the services right now, who meet credit standards, and help make that, introduction back to a realtor. So just kind of, how to get their database. There are lots of ways to do it, but I think it's really important that you understand why their database is valuable and how you can be of value to them. Because it's, knocking on their door and saying, hey, can you send me more deals is just, that's a losing strategy. It's just not going to work. It's what so many loan officers do because they're not sure what else to talk about, how else to add value. This is a strategy where you can add value, where you can bolster that relationship, create new relationships, or strengthen existing ones. So, how to get their database. Again, Louis said lots of ways to do it. Multiple strategies. You can do it compliantly, but that's one of the reasons this is, I think, an important thing to be thinking about.
Yeah, and I want to add a little bit to that. The importance isn't necessarily that they have this name and email address, because you can go and buy every name and email address in the whole United States, right? It's all available. The important thing is that affinity, or that person remembering that realtor's name, and then you being able to bring up that realtor, because that's going to be 4 to 5 times more responsive. And it's what turns it from a cold call when, they apply with their bank or credit union and you reach out and say, hey, I just wanted to chat. I work with so-and-so, he sold you your house or she helped you find your first house. And just wanted to see if, there's anything that we can help you with in getting pre-qualified, and then let the conversation go from there. Versus calling somebody out of the blue, cold calls don't work. Just please stop doing them. But this is what turns it from a cold call to a warm call, because you can make that connection to a face that they're going to remember.
You mentioned, realtors going out, collecting their databases from open houses or from their past clients. Let's talk about, what those opportunities look like. How much opportunity is in that database?
So from a quantity of opportunity perspective, we're in kind of a slump, at least in the current market. We see about 1% of any database applying for a mortgage every month. In a more ordinary year, you're closer to 1.5 or 2% of a database applying every month. So things are a little bit slow, but keep in mind, I've got 4,000 contacts in my phone, and realtors should have way more than that in a lot of cases. And so for every 1,000 people, there are 10 of them that start the home buying process each month. When you look at just statistics overall, a person on average stays in a home between 10 and 11 years. And during that 10 or 11 year period, they go with one purchase to get into the home. They generally do 2 refinance, so purchase, refi before finally purchasing another home and selling their current. And so when you look at that kind of math over that time period, you can expect that about 1% of the database is moving. It's a little less than 1%, but about 1% of the database is moving every single month. We are seeing that. Obviously, right now is a little bit of a down year, but you do make up that number. I should kind of restate this. So we're in a little bit of a down year, but on average, it's 1% are starting the loan process, either for a purchase or for a refinance. And that gives you an idea of, 1,000-person database, 10 people starting the loan process each month. And that's a lot of opportunity of people that know you, trust you, or know this realtor and trust them, who are local to your area. And if you're able to even catch a small handful of those and make that connection back to the realtor, you're going to make a substantial impact on their business, and really secure your position as a partner rather than just a lender who comes to them and asks for more business. It's adding value to them and delivering those mortgage opportunities. So, if you're wondering if there's stuff happening, everyone's like, the market's slow. What do my past clients, need a refi for? At the end of the day, you have a small percentage of refi still happening, but it's not like the bottom fell out of it and nobody's getting a mortgage. It's less than it's been, but it is still happening really consistently. And, we know this because we monitor about, I think it's 16 million people for mortgage-related activity every single, I was going to say every single day, but now it's every single minute. We're seeing everyone that's starting that loan process out of that population. So there's so much actually happening inside of the market right now. And we're consistently working with loan officers who are surprised by the amount of activity that is happening that isn't coming back to them, because they assume, and realtors do the same thing, they assume that, I did a good job the first time, this person is going to remember me, and you may have done a great job the first time, but frankly, it's really hard to remember someone when they helped you buy your first home, and then 11 years later, when you're ready to buy your next home, you need to remember that person's name, especially after you've unsubscribed from their email because all they sent you was, can I help you buy another home marketing for the first 3 years, and you stopped paying attention, right? So those are just some of the realities of why we're in the situation we are, why retention is so low in the mortgage space and in the realtor space. You're facing the same struggle, and it's really hard to pull those people back to you through the decade of time between that realtor helping them purchase their first home and that person being in the market for the next home.
Yeah, and then there's, let me add one little part to that. Even if you did such a great job, that purchase, refinance, purchase, that's a long period of time. This isn't like the grocery store down the street that you're going to go back to. This is a client that you worked with, and a year to 2 years later, they're just, they aren't avoiding you. They just have been bombarded with so many different offers that they end up talking to one of those. And what our clients have said a lot of times is, every time I reach out, it's actually, they're like, oh, I just completely forgot your name. I forgot that I did it with you, but I'm glad you reached out and let's talk. So, but that time period is a really long period. And so it's less like, the last 2 years when people were just trying to find a loan originator to do their refinance. There's still a ton happening. You just got to go and find it.
I do want to go back to, what does a database look like? We can import anyone, as Louis mentioned, that has a name and phone number, or name and email. So when it comes to the realtor's database, as William mentioned, he has about 4,000 contacts on his phone. You can take their phone contacts, their email contacts, anyone in their CRM. And even if it is just 4,000 contacts, that's, as William mentioned earlier with the statistic, that's 40 people who are going to be in the market that you, again, have that warm relationship with because you're associated with their realtor.
Yeah. And a lot of people say, well, my agent doesn't even keep a CRM. It's not, it's not a matter of them keeping a perfect CRM. They can go hit export on all the emails from their email account. And that's the contacts that they've talked to over the last 5 or 6 years. So
We discussed the amount of opportunity in the Realtor Partners database, but what kind of alert opportunities should you be looking for?
The first thing that makes the most sense from a loan officer and a realtor strategy perspective is an instant inquiry alert, where you're able to be notified within minutes of that person having their credit pulled for a mortgage with somebody. And again, like that is right now, the majority of the people starting that home buying process are starting it with a mortgage application rather than listing their home. So lead with that as far as the strategy is concerned. That's the easy one. It's a no-brainer. The alert, I mean, some people look at that and they've historically been like, is that a little bit late? Have I lost the opportunity? And the truth is, it's just, you haven't. A lot of people start that loan process with their local credit union, with their local bank, an online lender, someone who called them over the phone. If you're getting the notification within minutes, you're going to be able to reach out to this person and be talking to them and deliver an offer to them before they've even seen disclosures from that other lender. And remember, you have that personal, either a one-to-one relationship or an affinity relationship through this realtor partner that you can fall back on. Hey, I've worked with Louis. He's a great realtor partner, and do that introduction. And you're the local presence and the person that they have that connection to. So being able to play on that strategy, it's going to make the most sense to the realtor partner, and they're going to be able to see the value. But that's not the only strategy that you can follow. We've also got predictive analytics that catch people really upstream of entering the market and having their credit pulled for a mortgage. And that's really our whole goal with our predictive model. But some of those, the two examples of those that I think are useful here are there's actually a home seller predictive alert. And this is going to be great because if you think about what a realtor needs, if you can provide them a referral of a home seller, Louis is going to list his home for sale and he's going to be purchasing a new home. That's a lot of value for that realtor. And so if you can reach out to them on one of our home seller alerts, one example of those that I think is, I find it fascinating is it's only people with a certain credit profile. But when someone has this specific credit profile and they recently have closed on a HELOC, home equity line of credit type of product, a really high percentage of these people are doing that HELOC specifically just to pay off debts, clean up their credit, do some renovation to the house in order to prepare to sell their home and purchase a new one. And so the HELOC is just a strategic financial product they're using to get prepared to sell their current home and buy a new one. And so when we see this little pattern, we can give you an alert that says, hey, this is a very high probability this person is going to be selling their home. And so when you get that alert on your Realtor Partners database, you can call them. They haven't started the loan with someone else. They haven't listed their home for sale. But in the next 6 months or so, there's a really good chance they're going to. And so engaging them and finding out what they're thinking about doing, and then being able to take that person pre-qualified and ready to go and make that referral to the realtor, it's going to be really a valuable referral. Like it's 2 transactions for them in the listing and the purchase. So that's one example, but we also have, like our first time home buyer model. That's where, we look at someone who doesn't have a home, has never purchased a home, but they're displaying really specific patterns of, it's really just how they are managing their debt. Someone who's taken their revolving balances and they've recently been paying them off in a kind of an expedited rate. The story here, what we're seeing is you have a person who's, maybe in the past year or so shown interest in buying a home, but never closed on it. And then they have this escalation of debt consolidation. Usually it means either they're finally taking their finances seriously, or they've recently, increased their earnings. So a promotion, a new job, they are now earning more money. That's like a golden opportunity of a first-time home buyer. And so, when you use the predictive modeling, you can find those kinds of opportunities. Again, get in contact with that person, get them pre-qualified, and make the connection back to that realtor to go out shopping and seeing what kind of homes are available. That's where we find some of the monitoring strategies are most successful, on any database, but particularly for these realtor partner databases.
Yeah, and with those predictive alerts, what our model is looking at who's going to likely be in the market within the next 90 days. So that's what's different than an inquiry. An inquiry is they're in the market, right? With predictive, it's more like, hey, you're credit pre-qualified. You're going to get that letter. but it's about building the relationship and saying, hey, what are you looking to do? Let's start talking about that. It's not about calling them and taking a nap instantly. So, and then along with those, predictive alerts, even if, you'll engage initially with the consumer and start talking about, what they need to do. Hey, congrats. Looks like you've been paying down your debt. And they may have like, hey, yeah, no, we're really looking to do this 3 or 4 months from now. That's great. And so that's the point when you can be like, hey, do you want me to connect you with so-and-so? Just so you can have a conversation and tell them you're likely to be listing. It's good to think about it ahead of time. And giving them that likely listing, even if it's 4 months out or 6 months out, those agents are going to love that, right? Because now they can make sure they stay in contact with them and they're not going to go to somebody else when they decide to list their house.
Well, and jumping in on that same concept, I think if you can engender that kind of goodwill and value to the realtor, what you'll find out is if you send them 1 or 2 of these, even if they're 3 or 4 or 6 months out from closing, they're going to start sending you business back immediately. And you'll find out the business that a realtor sends you is oftentimes further in the process and closer to closing than the business you've sent them. But they understand that that person is likely to close and it was a value to them. And so it's funny, but the reciprocation that they give you is oftentimes way in excess of the deals you're able to find them. And so that's part of the dynamics of the strategy that we're playing on here and advocating for. You're giving them value, and in return, they're going to give you value back. And it's a very, advantageous relationship for both parties. And that's one of the reasons we've had so much success reported back to us of users, following a strategy like this.
And then real quick, the last, alert type that I think is important is our migration alerts. And so this isn't, everyone in the database, but there's a lot of people that realtors will talk to, and, they'll kind of self-qualify them. Like they don't pull credit, but they talk to them like, hey, how's your credit? How's your job? How's your income? And they don't ever get those to you because they've had a conversation and said, okay, yeah, work on your credit. Let's get that improved. And so they've got people in their database that will have credit improving, especially with the last few years with the pandemic. There was so much, economic troubles that people had hard times, right? That a lot of people got left out of the whole market. But as those improve, you'll be able to watch those and know, hey, now their credit meets our FHA guidelines. And you're going to know before the consumer knows and before the agent knows. The agents, they can't go and check their credit. So working with you, that's value for you to be able to say, hey, this person's credit has improved. I talked to them. They're interested in talking about moving forward. So, they said they wanted to have a call.
Let's talk about how to reach out. And if I can play devil's advocate, I think a lot of people might be wondering, how do I reach out to these consumers without really sounding creepy, especially because there is a degree between them and the realtor's contact list. So what do we recommend? What does that look like for them to reach out to these consumers?
So I think the number one thing to keep in mind is people expect individual outreach, person to person, and as much of a human connection as you can create. So just relying on, I'm going to send a quick email that's a general already typed out thing. That's not going to be the strategy that brings the most success. It can work. A lot of people look at that and they're like, it's a numbers game and it works enough of the time. We'll run with that. But we really recommend take a one-to-one human approach to this, or at least I'm going to say I recommend that, because there are, a couple of ways you can approach this. But I recommend looking at it. The number of these opportunities that you're getting is not so excessive that you're going to be spending all day on the phone cold calling random people. It's like, no, they personally work with a realtor who I do business with. I know the region. I have a plenty of shared information. So when I do the outreach, I'm going to, make a phone call. If I have authorization, I'll send a text message. I might send some sort of video, like a bomb video, or give them some sort of what is the closest to like a one-to-one so that they know this came from a person. And frankly, I totally understand the story that goes on in people's heads with like, oh, this person is going to, know that I know something. And then how do I do that approach without sounding like I've been watching you? I think it's actually not too challenging to look at it from the perspective of, okay, this person knows that people are going to get notifications when they have their credit pulled for a mortgage. it's pretty common knowledge. So when you do the outreach, getting the trigger instantly is to your advantage because you're calling a day before anyone else. And when you call, you're going to say, hey, I work with this realtor partner, and remind them of that connection to that realtor partner. And then you're going to follow up with a really empathic approach of like, hey, you're probably going to start getting hammered with, marketing and follow-up calls from other lenders. But I just wanted to touch base and be there as a resource to make sure that you get a deal that's serving you or get the kind of loan product that's going to help you. And if you approach it from that way, you can face it head on. You don't have to pretend that this is a coincidence. You can address it face to face with the idea that, yeah, you're going to hear from other people, but I worked with a person that you know, and I have that personal connection, and I would love to help you out, answer questions that you have. And I want to take that same thing and project it forward, because a lot of loan officers, they'll make a couple of those calls and the client is just going to be, some of those clients are excited and they're happy to hear from you. But if you get a couple of those clients in a row and they're like, you know what, no, I'm good right now. Thank you so much. I don't need any help. And first off, you got to be careful. You don't say, can I, if you need help with anything, let me know. Like the most natural response to, if you need any help, let me know, is I don't need any help. Thank you. Like everyone is adverse to asking for help. Right. So, try and add value in a specific way. Can I help answer this specific question for you? Any specific concerns? But regardless, kind of to my other point, if you get this notification, you follow up and the person doesn't respond or responds with, I'm doing good right now, I really appreciate it. And thank you for reaching out. Because, most people are going to be polite and answer that way. Set a reminder in your phone. In 2 to 3 weeks from now, follow up again. It doesn't, I'm not talking about calling them every single day for the next 7 days. Give them a little bit of time to sit. And what happens is, if that lender that they're working with neglects them at all, is underperforming, is not answering their questions, which is so often the case with, big banks, big lenders, that person is going to experience a slump in their happiness in the level of service they're getting, and you're going to catch them right at the bottom of that slump. If that loan officer isn't on their ball, they're going to be happy to hear from you. And they're going to be like, no, I actually do have some questions that I haven't been able to get answered, and I'm really glad you called. So giving it a little bit of time is also a good strategy. Follow up fast and then follow up in 2 to 3 weeks from now. And between those two things, again, same strategy as far as messaging. How can you help the person? Those are the, engagement strategies that I personally recommend.
Yes.
How to approach this.
I would go even a little further and say, instantly 2 weeks, and then check in once a month. And the check-ins should just be like, hey, did you get taken care of? Right? It doesn't need to be like, hey, can I give you the mortgage? Right? Like, do you get taken care of? Do you have any questions? Because people aren't applying for a mortgage and then buying a house in 2 weeks in this kind of market. They're entering the process. 3-6 months later, they're finally getting a house, or, getting qualified and getting a house. So an online lender or a big bank is going to drop the ball. I mean, their local bank or Wells Fargo, they're not going to follow up. They're going to give them a great big to-do list and say, okay, see you later. Come back when you're ready. And so that's when there's just opportunity between now and that point when they can actually get the deal done.
One other point as far as the follow-up strategy. When you're dealing with larger databases or larger number of alerts, one of the best ways to prioritize who you're going to reach out to and follow up with is, again, if you don't have that many alerts, just follow up with all of them. But if you're trying to prioritize because you have a larger database, follow up with the people that open your email, that click the links. Because when we deliver the alert that, Lily had her credit pulled for a mortgage, we send her an email which has an offer of credit in the email. And if you're prioritizing, follow up with the Lily who opened the email that day. Follow up with the people that you are fresh on their mind and they're by their actions demonstrating interest or engagement. And that'll help you prioritize. So there are lots of, ways you can approach messaging. There are lots of strategies you can do in your CRM. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything will ever beat a human being reaching out to another human at a time when that person needs the services that person has to offer. And if you do that to someone that you have a personal relationship with or a shared relationship with, you're not going to find you're not going to find a big lender or a large institution doing broad marketing across the nation that can compete with that. That's where you secure your personal local advantage. And I think that's what all of us should be focused on, because, you've got these lenders with billion-dollar marketing budgets. And it's not an exaggeration to say that they're spending, tens of millions of dollars to try and turn these people into their clients instead of yours. But you have the advantage of knowing the area, knowing the people, and being able to provide the kind of service that that person is interested in, that personal one-to-one outreach. And so I don't think we should look at ourselves as an underdog. We actually have an advantage, and we just need to play to our strengths, especially in a strategy like this. And it's a strategy that between you and the realtor, you're going to really have a very good, I think, defensive play and strategy for that list of relationships and those contacts.
There you go. That's your simple version of this strategy. Again, it's really simple to work with these partners that you're already working with to some degree. Pop them into MonitorBase. You just set it and forget it. You don't have to touch these contacts until there is an opportunity that's ripe and ready for you to take action. If you have specific questions on compliance, how this works, feel free to reach out to sales@monitorbase.com for those questions. Go to monitorbase.com and subscribe to our blog. We're going to be posting these videos about once a month to get new strategies according to the current market to help you get more deals.